We have watches, we have warnings, we have advisories, and they pretty much cover just about everybody from coast to coast. I think there's a warning or an advisory in almost every single state tonight. Except, I mean, it's real, except for maybe Maine. But we will, of course, dissect all of this, talk about our storm for tomorrow night into Saturday morning. We'll look ahead to next Tuesday, which might bring, dare we say, some accumulating snow for the I 95 corridor before everybody just loses their minds completely. Well, we'll see what we can do about that tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which of course is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video, and we have a coupon code for you, and that's I want a weather station. And if you do, you will get
You will get a big 10% off. Take advantage of that, folks. 10%.
yes. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. I'm Joe Cioffi. Joe Rayo is on the left,
Yes, here I am.
and I'm on the right. We don't usually introduce ourselves, but we do occasionally get new people in the audience. And, we've got famous people that are watching all the time from coast to coast, whose names we will only mention shamelessly if we can get a promo out of it. But welcome to everybody. The greatest stars are the stars that are on the chat board tonight, as all the regulars are there, and we've been seeing more and more new people. I see GBP. Hello, GBP. That's a new one on the chat. That's a new person on the chat board, and we encourage people to join in on the conversation. And of course, those of you who are just watching in the background, enjoying the show, thank you for being here. If you like the show, hit the like button because Joe Rayo has a bell and he has to ring it so that I will eventually go completely deaf. So when we get to 100 likes. So if you would like to see that happen, just hit the like button. And we are on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35. Fridays and Saturdays are usually off days for us, but we're going to be on this Friday night because we do have a storm to deal with Friday night into Saturday. And speaking of which, Mr. Rayo, um,
Yes.
I'm thinking they're going to put up. This is the first thing that crossed my mind is they're, they haven't put up a wind advisory yet. I mean, I would think that they're going to do that. So why are they waiting till tomorrow when Philadelphia put theirs? Well, if I say Philadelphia, I say Mount Holly. They put theirs up tonight, but Upton decided to wait. Just
You know,
makes the map less, but it's just kind of even with all the warnings and advisories, and the feng shui was off without it.
I'm trying to figure this all out because the coordination messages between the various National Weather Service offices they usually coordinate with each other as to what kind of advisories or watch or warning they're going to post. And yeah, sometimes you get this situation where you got a bunch of watches and warnings to the north and east and to the south and west, and like right in the middle is New York with a great big hole.
Right.
Nothing, and you scratch your head, but there must be some rhyme or reason to this, but I've never been able to figure it out.
Yeah, I guess whoever makes it, just however it is they make their decisions. But we are going to get some heavy rain tomorrow night into Saturday morning, and we are going to get some wind, and I think there's going to be some coastal flooding issues certainly, with another one of these semi-screaming. Well, this will be more than a semi-screaming southeast wind or south-southeast wind. The coastal flooding was extensive on Tuesday, and with the new moon tonight, tomorrow's peak tides, I got to think that it could be every bit as problematic tomorrow night into Saturday morning as it was this past Tuesday night.
I would agree with you. And I saw a news report tonight. One gentleman was saying that this was the worst flooding on Long Island. I think it was Freeport, the worst flooding that he's seen since Sandy. That's 12
Yeah.
years. Yeah, not quite 12 years ago. But if you remember, Sandy was a storm that brought in a tremendous southeasterly wind, and we had a lot of south and southeasterly wind. I called it a sou'easter the other night,
Right.
and pushing all that water on shore, leading to all of that flooding. So there you go.
We have weather going on everywhere in the U.S. and this is the exact. How many days did we have in December where we pulled up the watches and warnings map, Joe, and had hardly anything on it. And as oftentimes happens in the world of weather, when you go from one extreme, you also eventually wind up at the other end. And this is where we were on Tuesday when we're at it again for today. For you snow lovers, you got to go to the upper Midwest, to the Great Lakes. Winter storm warnings up for much of the state of Michigan. There's watches up for eastern Michigan, uh, which I think may include Detroit. It's hard to see on the big map, but most of the state is under a winter storm warning, as is northwest Indiana, northern Illinois, Chicago. Could get maybe 8, 9, 10 inches, maybe even a foot. Wisconsin, except the northwest corner, under winter storm warnings. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan under a winter storm warning. We have blizzard warnings up for much of Iowa, and where the blizzard warnings aren't up, the winter storm warnings are, and they extend back into Nebraska. Winter weather advisories are wrapped all around that. Wind advisories and even some high wind warnings in West Texas, but wind advisories from southern Arizona clear across the south and southeast, and you're going to get these gaps filled in. I mean, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, because they have the wind advisories up for coastal and southern New Jersey down into Delaware. So this is all going to probably get filled in tomorrow morning. I guess they, for whatever reason, those offices decided to wait. And we have high wind watches up in parts of western Vermont, northwest New Hampshire, western New York. There's some winter storm watches up in, I think it's winter storm watches up in upstate New York. So one thing I can't deal with the Weather Service on this map, and I have very few complaints. No, that's a lake effect snow warning for Watertown. So let's see what that's about. Um, they have it for this is for 1 a.m. Friday. Oh, it's up right now. Lake effect snow warning up right now because they are getting some snow not that far from you, by the way. It's on the radar. And the West also blizzard warnings in southern parts of Idaho. Although it's not I looked at some of the forecasts down there, Joe. Most of them are only calling for a few inches. It's really more about the wind than anything else, which will be restricting visibilities. Large areas of winter storm warnings in Idaho, western Montana, western Wyoming, down the Wasatch, or if you're coming from the south up the Wasatch, and in northwest Nevada, most of Oregon, northern parts of California, the Sierra Nevadas. And tomorrow's going to be another big severe weather day. Uh, I think it could be as robust as what we saw on Tuesday with numerous severe thunderstorms and tornadoes across the south and southeast.
I saw on the SPC for tonight that area um, with the highest risk, 10% possibility or probability of tornadic activity, and it doesn't really get much higher than that. So they really are thinking about severe weather. They're really thinking about the potential for possible tornadic activity with some of these storms tonight, probably tomorrow night as well. So it's going to be kind of scary again if you live down across the southeast, especially in those zones that are outlined by SPC for slight or even moderate activity.
By the way, they also have high wind warnings up and down, well, over much of the Appalachians, and I think I'm in a high wind warning. I've just noticed. Yes, I am in a high wind warning here in North Georgia. Uh, they're going for gusts to 50, which up this way, 20 to 35 is a wind advisory here. So the high wind warning is for gusts up to 50 miles an hour. And what's going on in Hawaii? Let me take a look.
I haven't been to Hawaii lately.
No, I know. It must have been at least you must have went on the last time you've been off.
Yeah.
um, no, they've got green over there, so I'm thinking flood watches. But then there's some yellows. What is that? Oh, high. This is for the Big Island. It looks like it's a high wind warning. Oh well, I was just kind of curious because we every once in a while we see stuff going on there. Okay, let's move right along and head to the satellite loop tonight. And those of you, if you've been with us for over the last few storms, you know this signature here, and that's that subtropical jet rearing its ugly head again, coming out of the Pacific across the Gulf of Mexico and off the southeast coast. So that's a clue that we've got stuff going on, and you can also see the beginnings of what will probably be a very well-defined satellite rotation once this storm system uh, really starts to develop and intensify. It's going to take, just like the last one, it's going to go up uh, to the Great Lakes as a major storm. Probably going to get down into the low 970s as far as pressures are concerned. And the setup for the eastern seaboard and for the south and the southeast and the Ohio Valley is the same as it was the last time. It's going to be rocky to some extent. I think Friday night into Saturday morning.
And I should point out, especially here in the New York City metropolitan area, the local TV weathercasters and the local newscasters as well. And another big storm is coming, another threat of heavy rain and more flooding and blah, 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 blah. But I want to point out and this is based upon data that I looked at from a few days ago and also data I looked at today on the SERF, or as we lovingly refer to it as les plumes,
Yes.
that the rain totals that are being put out for this next impending wave of precipitation tomorrow night, on average, comes out to be only about 39.4% of the amounts or the values that they were putting out for the storm that hit us a couple of nights ago. So, generally speaking, we're not going to see, or we should not see, anything along the lines of anything anywhere near what we saw in terms of the precipitation amounts that we had the other night of 2 and 3 and 4 inches. It probably is going to be less than half of that.
I was thinking an inch to an inch and a half in most places, and
I
maybe
yeah,
maybe less as you go, say South Jersey, Southern Pennsylvania southward, and those amounts would be more as you go north.
right. I would agree. I would agree. I mean, for example, like I here in Putnam Valley, with the last atrocity, picked up 3.2 inches of rain. So if this is correct, if the analysis is correct with the comparison of storms, this go around, I shouldn't go more than 1.25 inches
All right.
with the amount that I'll see tomorrow night, and it might even be a little less than that. But it's not. It does not look like the atrocity of what happened the 2 nights ago, where people were literally getting flooded out because of. And also the other thing is, up here, for example, where I am, and places around me and to the north. I mean, we had a fairly sizable snow cover. I mean, I had
Well, you don't
almost
have that this time, and that makes a difference with the
that's a big
rivers and the streams and everything else.
that is a big plus that we don't have. I don't have to worry about, in addition to all of the rain, I don't have to worry about the meltdown of approximately a half a foot of snow to add on to all of that. So, in a way, and it's going to be a fast moving system, Joe. I mean, many people will probably, it's a Friday night. I don't know when people go to bed on a Friday night, but if you go to bed early on Friday night, you wake up on Saturday morning a little late. You may wake up to bright sunshine. The whole thing will have passed by in the overnight hours, say
Well,
like midnight or one.
yeah, it's another 6 to 8 hour event, really.
Right.
At the end of the day, I mean that's what the last one was, and this is going to be about the same in terms of duration.
Right.
And it'll play out how it plays out. I just, a lot of stuff is compromised from Tuesday's storm. Ground is very, very soft and very wet. So I would think that, if you get into a fairly decent gust of wind, when I say decent, I mean a 40 mile or a 50 mile an hour wind might be enough to take a tree or two down,
Right.
or two or three or more. So
Yeah.
just bear that in mind. Um, Oftentimes when you get situations like this, in my experience, when we've had a storm followed by another storm, especially when it comes to getting a lot of rain, when the second storm comes around, it may not necessarily be as potent. This one is every bit as potent. It's just a little bit, slightly different with regards to the setup. So you're not getting, as robust. I mean, just one of the things I'm seeing right off the bat. Yeah, there's that subtropical jet coming out of the Pacific that's setting up, but it seems to be a little less defined as the one um, as the one we saw from Tuesday's storm. But I'm not going to be able to say from one spot to another. There's always going to be variability in these sorts of things. I talked to a few people today that are inland in Jersey, and where they were, the winds weren't that bad, and they didn't really have any major problems. But the coast got hammered, and then there were inland spots that had problems with winds too, because we saw gusts up to 50 and 60 miles an hour in some inland places. So, not saying it's going to be that high, but the point is, it will take less at this time around to cause more problems. So you just want to be cautious of that if you're traveling around tomorrow night. And of course, you can see all the energy that's coming uh, from the Rockies there and moving now into the plains. So everything on the satellite says that things are getting set up. And we'll take a look at the radar. And first off, we got a little bit of snow activity going on here. Always likes to do that on my screen. When I zoom in on the east, it goes to the northwest. I don't know why that is, but um, it does that. See if I could maybe just size that'll prevent it. Okay, so let's try again. All right.
All right. Cover your ears, Joe.
All right.
We're up to 110 likes already.
Thank
So,
you, those of you who hit the like button. And I think David.
incidentally, we're talking about tomorrow night. Um, it's interesting to me that Westchester County, from our friends at Upton, the National Weather Service for New York City, Westchester County is under a flood watch, but I'm in Putnam County, which is right across the border. No flood watch for me. So the implication here is that the heaviest rains are going to fall just to my south and to our east. I mean, there are flood watches in effect now for Westchester, for New York City, all of Long Island, even for coastal sections of Connecticut. In fact, it looks like for most of Connecticut. Let me
Right.
just make sure that that's true.
I think most of
Yeah, flood
Connecticut.
watch. But and this is what we were talking about at the top of the show, that for Middletown, for Orange County, which is right next door to me, and for my county, Putnam, and points north. This is Albany's jurisdiction now. For Dutchess and Ulster, and for Sullivan County, no flood watch is in effect, and it's weird. It is weird. I don't remember. I just mentioned a few moments ago about the hole. I mean, here you have Northwest New Jersey covered by Mount Holly, National Weather Service. They're under a flood watch.
Right, and Northeast isn't. And I know it's for whatever reason they decided to wait one more period. I don't know what the logic is behind it.
I mean, if you draw a line from Port Jervis, which is in near, it's not New Jersey, it's New York. I understand that, but the northwest corner of New Jersey. Draw a line from northwest New Jersey to the northwest corner of Connecticut. You know, and with northern New Jersey and western Connecticut all under a flood watch. Why, for God's sake, isn't Orange County, Putnam County, and even as part of Dutchess County in the flood watch? They're not. But again, it's different strokes for different folks, I guess. I don't know.
Well, as I said, we've got snow showers going on in parts of upstate New York with a weak disturbance that we saw yesterday moving through parts of the upper Midwest through Iowa and so on. And now you're seeing the beginnings of the new storm developing, and the low center is going to be coming out of Oklahoma. You've got snow in northern Kansas already, and into southeastern Nebraska, and you've got an arc that's starting to expand across Missouri and Iowa. Much of what is there is actually aloft. Pacific Northwest is busy with moisture, and there was that little purple box that comes and goes in southeastern Washington State is a snow squall warning. That's 3 days in a row now, Joe, that we've seen that purple box. WPC has got an inch and a half for northern New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, and I think I could probably eyeball this to say that it's north of Westchester County that they have an inch and a half plus. It looks like it goes almost to Poughkeepsie. All of Connecticut is under an inch and a half and some 2 inch plus amounts there. Uh, Much of Massachusetts into coastal New Hampshire and southernmost Maine, down to about Long Island. Everybody else is on the order of about an inch to an inch and a quarter, and that goes all the way down into northeast Georgia. We're seeing some big rainfall amounts indicated for southeast Missouri, northwest Tennessee, northeast Arkansas, western Kentucky, southern Indiana, and southern. And as you go up into northern Illinois, this is where you get into the snow. Some of it's going to be rain, though, but it'll be rain changing to heavy snow in areas in parts of northern Illinois and maybe even in Chicago. It'll do it that way. We've also got up to an inch of liquid throughout much of Wisconsin. Cuts down as you get to the northwest. The west continues to be busy with several to many inches along the coast of Northern California into Oregon. Also in the Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, in those areas it'll be in as the form of snow. And this is the probability for at least 4. Okay, we stepped it up. We usually do the probability for at least 2. And the big red area that you see is 95 to 100% probability for at least 4. The salmon color is 80% probability. I like to use the 50%. So figure from northeastern Minnesota, Duluth, for example, cutting down into southwest Minnesota, a small portion of southeast South Dakota, and then swinging around into northernmost Oklahoma, northernmost Missouri, across central Illinois, northern Indiana, and then it kind of curls back up from there. Uh, that's that's the back edge area of at least 4 inches, in my opinion. And for the folks I was reading Toronto's forecast from Environmental Canada.
Right.
Okay, so get this, Joe. So for tonight, was it for tonight or tomorrow? I think it was for tonight that they had chance of rain or snow and a low temperature of -8. So can you make it a little clearer? Because I'm trying to figure. All right. I mean, it's quite possible that the temperatures are going to be above freeze. Now it's in Celsius, by the way, -8. Okay, so we're talking of a low down around or under 20.
Right.
But could they at least tell you that it'll be rain changing to snow, so that somebody's not going to stand around where it's at 20 when it gets down to 20 degrees and wonder why is it not raining, since they said rain or snow. The wording was just, and I was reading through all the forecasts, and finally I got to a time period where they were talking about 5 to 10 centimeter accumulations. So that would be, they're going 2 to 4
I've never.
for Toronto.
They've got a very interesting way at Environment Canada of forecasting. I mean, it's you instead of saying like mostly cloudy, they have cloudy with sunny periods, or mostly sunny, sunny with cloudy periods.
Right.
And that's it's always the language, the linguistics of the Canadian forecasts are so much different than what we're accustomed to here in the United States. And I'm not making fun.
We're just observing.
Another way of semantics. Let's put it that way.
Right. Exactly.
So, you're right. I agree with you. If you're going to have a low temperature of -8, and they're still saying a chance of rain or snow.
Right. Or is the low is the low in the early part of the night, and then temperatures rise, and it goes from snow to rain? I got no sense of where they were going with that. Something like that. It was just bizarre. All right. Here's the West, because we don't like to leave out the folks in the West. They're avid watchers of the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We have high probabilities for at least 4 in the western half of Colorado, in Utah. Salt Lake City's in the mix. western Wyoming, southern half of Idaho, and a good chunk of the state of Oregon, the Sierra Nevadas, and California, and also the Cascades. It starts to tail off, though, as you go up to the north. I'm going to put the probability of 12 and take a look at what that shows. And you do have areas there in the west that we just pointed out for the probability of 4 that also have some high probabilities, particularly in the Cascades in Oregon. You're looking at high probability for at least a foot, and also in the Wasatch and in the east with the Great Lakes storm. We do have areas here that are 50% or higher probability. Chicago's just outside of it now of a probability for 12. But those numbers do go up, particularly when you head up toward Green Bay and northern parts of Michigan. There's an 80% chance, according to WPC, for at least a foot of the white stuff. Now, WPC in the long range. This is so exciting. In the long range, I'm going to go south first. This map would let me, because Jess Harden is just chomping at the bit here about the South. So they have, this is with the second system that is coming along early next week. So this is for Sunday into Monday. Light green is 10 to 30, darker green 30 to 50, and the blue is 50 to 70. And the darker green and blue encompass eastern Oklahoma and except much of the central and northern part of Arkansas, southernmost Missouri, western Tennessee. Then we go to Monday into Tuesday. And this is where we have a 10 to 30% chance for at least 2 or 3 inches. Southern Arkansas, northern Mississippi, northwest, on a diagonal there across northern Alabama, almost all of Tennessee, western North Carolina to just north of me, Joe. They had me in this yesterday. Now they kind of edged it up further north. Southeast Kentucky, up through the central Appalachians, and then cutting across Maryland, eastern Pennsylvania, almost all of New Jersey except the southeast, all of Long Island, the Hudson Valley, lower, middle, and upper, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, and Maine. And then on Tuesday, here's a first one of the winter, and actually the first time I think maybe in 2 years we've seen this. They have a 30 to 50% chance for at least a few inches from eastern Maryland, Delaware, all the way up the coast into all the way up to Maine, all of eastern Pennsylvania, all of southern New York, well, south. I'm sorry, all of southeastern New York, and the Hudson Valley going all the way up to the Catskills, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Long Island, all in a 30 to 50% chance for at least a few inches.
An I-95 storm.
Well, according to our friends over at WPC, that is correct. And on the last day, we're talking up in northern New England here as we take a look. If I could just get this thing to put the state borders. 10 to 30 in Maine, 30 to 50% chance, Tim, if you're still on the board, in New Brunswick. So the long range WPC a bit on the bullish side when it comes to where we're going with all of this. So let's shall we look at the GFS and see what it's going to do for the first storm, and then we could talk about the second one.
Right, right.
Okay. So,
and by the way, the WPC has the entire tri-state region, and I'm not talking about any kind of cutoff north of, let's say, Westchester County, the entire region in at least 1 inch. And then if you move right across the border into Connecticut, that's where they have the ISO Hyatt for the 1.5 inch line. So you would say like places that were near the Connecticut-New York border.
Would you like to share that on the screen?
Yeah, I could share that if you.
I just did. David Fuller hitting 2 super chats tonight. Thank you, David. I'm sorry I saw your first one. Don't look forward to power outages again. No high wind watch, thankfully, at least not yet. For David. No, you're in a wind advisory. And then as I truly love your show, Joe's when you're warning about the weather, I better be prepared. The Weather Channel holding on for dear life with a live video in a hurricane and people walking normally behind them. Ah, yes, we've all seen that, I think. One of the higher moments of weather television. Um, yeah, I mean, you got the screen if you want. So,
Hang on, let me just. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Unlike Joe likes to show the pretty colors on these QPF maps. I in turn like to look at the contours more easier for me to make out. Now, can you see this, Joe? Is it on the screen there?
it is now on the screen. Yes.
Okay. So here's what I'm talking about. This is the 24-hour QPF map, valid from 0Z Saturday, which would be 7 p.m. Friday night, to 0Z Sunday, 7 p.m. Saturday night, during that 24-hour period. And as you can see, here's the New York area, and you could see that the blue contour is the 1-inch contour, and that covers from eastern Pennsylvania all the way up almost to Albany, across western Massachusetts, and on up into southern and central New Hampshire and extreme southern Maine, and then back down again across the rest of Massachusetts. So this entire area, according to WPC, is enveloped by 1-inch amounts. But look just across the border into Connecticut, and there's a little circle here, a brown circle or brown contour, which actually encompasses also most of Connecticut and all of Rhode Island. And I know it's difficult to see on most screens, but that's 1.5. So that little contour right here indicates 1.5 inches of possible QPF, 1.5 inches of possible rainfall. So you could see that places that are, let's say, near the Hudson River Valley, which I am, for example, could pick up maybe 1.25 inches. And guess what? That's exactly what I said a little while ago in comparing the plumes values of 2 days ago to what's coming tomorrow night. I said I got 3.2 inches the last time, so I should get only about 1.25 inches this time, based upon receiving only about 40% of whatever I received 2 nights ago. And that pretty much looks like what WPC is saying, that in this zone right here, you might get 1.25 inches. Further to the west, maybe closer to 1 inch. But there seemingly is no reason why, if you're going to have Westchester and Rockland and New York and Long Island in a watch, there's no reason why my area, Putnam or Orange County or Ulster County or Sullivan or Dutchess County, shouldn't be in a watch as well. Incidentally, the 1.5-inch contour does not reach into Long Island, but darn, they're awfully close. It's just over and across Long Island Sound, you get into 1.5. So again, in this particular setup, it appears the further north and east you go, the greater the opportunity of seeing more in the way of rain. Sorry about that, Dennis Castier, because I know Dennis lives in Monroe, Connecticut, and it looks like Monroe is right underneath that 1.5-inch contour, according to, again, WPC. And that's, again, from a 24-hour period, 7 p.m. tomorrow night to 7 p.m. Saturday night, although, as Joe pointed out, this is going to be a 6 to 8 hour event. But that doesn't sound very good, because that means we're jamming, let's say, all of this rain into a relatively short interval of time, which could lead to some localized flooding issues.
All right. Did you want to share a bit? So I know there's a lot of
Yes.
this. I know folks are talking about a lot of buffering. I'm sorry about that. There's not. That's not my doing. It just happens. Uh, let's see if I can figure something out before. I don't want to lose anybody here. Hang on a second. Let me close a couple of windows. Times the Storm Prediction Center's site goes a little kablooey on me, so maybe if I close that, let's see. Hopefully that'll prove things. And one more I got to close, and that's this one. Okay, so maybe that'll help the cause. If you are buffering, just close out of YouTube and then just jump back in. That usually solves the problem. And hang on a second, Joe. Can you? Um, oh, there we go. Never mind. Something just some weird stuff's going on here tonight. Let me see if I can bring this map up
Yeah,
here.
I'm doing this. What you just said, every time I come back, we're kind of frozen. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
unfreeze us.
sure. I know. It's frustrating. Okay, I got the map I wanted up. So, all right.
All right.
So let's roll through the GFS and see what's going on. And so we got a low. We've got our low in eastern Oklahoma. We've been saying this for both these storms. I mean, the models have been so good with these spot, locked into them 7 days ahead of time, and they've hardly wavered. Little east here, a little west there, but really not enough to make a difference. That low runs up into Missouri and Illinois, up into northeast Indiana, eventually up into eastern Michigan, and you can see the very tight pressure gradient both on the west side in the western lakes and the gradient developing on the east side. And that's going to play in Friday night into Saturday and across the south and southeast tomorrow into tomorrow night. We're going to have convection to deal with and thunderstorms and severe weather. That is with a 10% tornado risk, as Joe mentioned. And then the storm should move away and we'll start to see some improvement. Although the wind should, I think that it's going to be pretty windy for most of the day on Saturday into Saturday evening, and still on the breezy side on Sunday.
Yes. Yeah.
And, and coupled with arriving cold.
Yeah, that's going to be that's the thing for next week. I know a lot of people have been talking about, oh, we're going to get snow on Tuesday. I want to know about snow. But really, oozing, and that's the term I think would best describe this, Joe. Oozing into our area, slowly but surely, from Western Canada and the Plain States, will be a gradual decline in the temperature, much colder weather. And I put up on my Facebook page NOAA's low temperature map for Sunday morning. There are going to be places in Montana, people are going to be waking up to temperatures of 30 degrees below zero. 30 degrees below, and that's not a wind chill, folks. That is the actual ambient air temperature. It's been a long time since we've seen those kind of temperatures over parts of the Plain States, and this is it. This is going to be a trend toward much colder conditions, not only out there but also for us as we move into next week and beyond.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that we are finally the elusive cold air is going to be coming into the east. Now, watching the upper air, of course, we've talked about how this trough phases with this energy that's dropping down into Montana. You can see the upper low that goes up into the Great Lakes. And that's, of course, the first storm. And then it sort of swings the trough around on Sunday, and that helps to bring in the cold air, and we'll be holding on to that cold air Monday into Tuesday. Now, there's energy that's coming out from California. There's an upper low. You can just kind of see it on the edge of the map here Saturday afternoon. And when I go to the surface map again, you'll see it again. That's going to ride southeastward. And now here's where it starts to get a little bit, a little bit uncertain. The GFS has been getting sharper and sharper with this trough, especially on this last run, where it suddenly decides to have a cutoff low near Pittsburgh by the time we get to Tuesday night. I don't know that that's correct. Then you have the European, which, by the way, I don't know if you saw last night's European and then the day run. Did you see last night's European?
Yes.
Okay, you did.
It was a surprise. It was a surprise.
You
I
did.
saw this afternoon's run. I said, "What?"
Did you? You did see the 945 low in northern New Hampshire, right?
I thought that was a little overdone.
You think?
Yeah.
You think? I mean, it goes from that extreme to then you go to the day run where it suppressed everything to the point where there was nothing. I mean, there was just absolutely nothing. And somehow I think, and that 945 low, by the way, was at the end of the forecast period. The ensembles were totally different. So and the fact that the GFS has been kind of consistent here now for several runs, I'm thinking the European is going to come back away from what it did during the day run today, because you have that, and then you have the Canadian model, which was all rain. The earlier Icon model, which was all rain. Then the 18Z comes out, and it was a colder run with snow down almost to the coast. But my point is that the Europeans, the European was just crazy. It was just
Let me
crazy.
let me give you quickly three snippets of the three technical discussions from three different weather offices. First one is New York, and this was put out this afternoon. It says attention turns to a potential coastal low that looks to impact the area sometime early to mid next week. Uncertainty remains with this system. Model spread has actually increased with today's 12Z guidance versus the 0Z guidance. Although slight timing differences, the GFS and the Canadian are similar. However, their ensembles are farther south and east. The latest European model is the big change from previous run, shows a much weaker low well offshore, leaving the area dry. This is the result of a less amplified upper level trough, and any energy out ahead of the trough stays farther south off the southeast coast. That's New York. Now, here's how Boston described all of this. He said the main thing to need to watch next week is the potential for a winter storm around Tuesday. This is 5 days in the future, so plenty of uncertainty. That's got to be the big word this week. The word of the week, folks, at weather offices in the Northeast, uncertainty as to what might happen. Appears the amplitude and timing of northern and southern stream energy will be the key components. Most of the guidance has been leaning toward a partial phase where low pressure cuts underneath and brings accumulating snow with perhaps some precipitation issues for a time on the coastal plain. While this is the most likely scenario, the 12Z European, along with a few of the GFS and European ensembles, show the potential for a lack of phasing, allowing the low to pass harmlessly out to sea with just dry and cold weather. In a nutshell, according to Boston, we'll need a few more days to sort this all out. And finally, our friends in Philadelphia, who say simply, we'll continue to monitor this as the system gets closer, as there are bound to be numerous changes in the track and intensity, given this storm is currently in the day 5 period. So if you think you're confused, and Joe and I might be confused, we're all confused. And as has been the case for, well, more than 40 years now for Joe and I, the battle cry, wait till the next run.
Well, I'm a little less confused after I kind of digested everything. I think we're going to see something on Tuesday. The European, one of the things I found out about the European that Bill Goodman and I have talked about is, because you and I have both noticed that the European for the last year or so has not been as good as it used to be, right?
Right.
And he said and he had told me this, and I forgot about it. Then he reminded me of it again. That they made a conscious decision, the private company that runs the European model, to take some of the computing power away from the operational run and use that computing power to focus more on the their ensemble run. And I'm thinking when they ring the bell.
201.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So in other words, they took some power away from the
operational run in order to do more stuff with the ensembles.
Right.
So ever since they did that, the operational run has been much more squirrely uh, than it ever used to be. And I think today was a big example. Actually, the last 4 runs, it's been doing all sorts of weird things. But today was a perfect example of that, because, as I said, and I'll show everybody what I'm talking about here. The day run is. Hang on, let me just. Well, let's run through the GFS while I have it on the screen. Then I'll come back to the whole European shenanigans. So this is Monday, early Monday morning. Snow breaking out in Oklahoma and Arkansas, and continues to spread eastward. It's to northwest Mississippi by Monday afternoon. It's into northern Alabama by Monday evening. You start to see the lower pressures both in the Gulf states and off the southeast coast. And the GFS has got a very, very sharp upper trough on this run. I don't know that that's real. That might be overdone as well. But that's why it has a deepening low running up the coast, and going over southeastern New England and heading up into Maine. And this would be accumulating snow to sleet and maybe a little bit of rain at the coast at the end, but mostly snow inland. Literal translation off this model would be uh, anywhere from 3 or 4 inches for coastal areas and maybe 4 to 8 inches in inland spots. But I'm not forecasting that. I'm just telling you what, rather than pull up all the snow maps and everything else. But I believe that this is overdone. I think it's going to be a weaker and further east, which would mean that it would be colder for the coast and that it would be mostly a snow event. That's my perception of this. I don't think the European operational is right. The ensembles were so far north and west of where, and the ensembles also gave several inches of snow up and down the I-95 corridor. So I felt better about that when I saw it, and then when I saw the icon do what it did this afternoon, I think you're going to see the models trend this way. Just real quick, Joe. Jeremiah Raven, as I responded to you because you brought up HA8 harp, okay. Um, so I told you that we don't do that on this channel. So please respect that. I don't really want it. I don't really want it discussed on the chat board. So and you're answering this the way most of you guys are. It must be talking points you have where you tell people what it is, and then you tell them to do their research and keep an open mind. Well, you know what? There are channels for that. This is not one of those places. Okay, thank you. Um, so anyhow, there goes the low. It goes away, and then we're left with very cold air behind it. And actually, one of the other things I've noticed in the overall long range, the GFS, the long range, and some of the other models have kind of they were showing a big warm up for week after next.
Right.
It's kind of a pause, and they've seemed to all kind of backed away from that to an extent. Because the GFS is actually on the operational run out for the next 16 days. It's not all that warm. It's fairly on the chilly side. So we'll we'll deal with that on another day when there's not a whole lot of weather going on. All right, Contino, you want the icon? I'll give you the icon. So here it is. This is the 18Z. The 12Z Icon and Canadian models had rained almost all the way up to Albany, for God's sake. But now the 18Z Icon has come in flatter and colder. So again, that's kind of supporting my idea of everything being flatter and a little bit further to the southeast. And of course, I like both. I like the GFS because it gives me about 3 inches of snow. So I'm hoping to see that on Monday night and Tuesday and next week. Now, as far as the European goes, as I mentioned that earlier about how squirrely it was, so this was last night's run, okay, for those of you who missed it. Um, so, and again, this doesn't show frozen precipitation, so it just shows how much. It doesn't show type, so everything is green, okay? But here's your low offshore, and this was all snow on the European, and then that goes out, and then all this energy starts to pile into the east with a digging, huge trough, cutting off, major storm, and it had a 945 low in northern New Hampshire, okay? And, this is like 15-mile an hour northwest winds on the backside. So that was one squirrely run. And then you go to the equally squirrely in the other direction 12Z run, where it has, the system for Sticks Tuesday is so far south and east, it goes off the Florida coast and then precipitation barely touches easternmost North Carolina and goes out. And then you have at the end of the period, something that forms offshore and is way out, uh, and it's just cold and dry. So I kind of think, I guess the way I'm looking at it is, as wrong as the first one run is just as wrong as the second. Maybe the compromise is somewhere to split the difference between the two of them. So I'm leaning toward the idea, Joe, that we are going to see some snow, accumulating snow Tuesday. Um, I don't think it's going to be something big. It'll be just enough to shut everybody up. Shut everybody up.
Maybe break the drought at Central Park, which I
Break the
think
drought and maybe a few inches on top of that, just to put a little icing on the cake, so it's not just one. Maybe it'll be enough so that it'll be more snow than we got all last winter, so we could put that aside.
maybe like Central Park It's a coastal system, just enough for Central Park to get like an inch or maybe an inch or two. But for a place like where I am, like 55 miles north of Manhattan, just get a few snow flurries.
Right, I got you. So I'm trying to think. There was something else I wanted to show tonight. Uh, well, at least as far as this next system is concerned, this is the European. Which run is this? This is the 12Z upper. It didn't even finish on tropical tidbits. That's strange. So I can't really show that. Uh, I'll go back to the 12Z on the GFS because that'll probably, just in terms of the upper air, what we're looking at here. So, the trough, here's the trough on this is the 18Z. So you see how sharp it is. It's like a sharp V, and then it goes negatively tilted and cuts off. I don't know. I just kind of think that that's way too much. And I'll tell you this, if it winds up being correct, then you really do have to be careful that if it's overdeveloped and you wind up with a coast hugger, it'll be snow to rain. So just bear that in mind.
Right,
The
absolutely.
right, the 12Z has a sharp trough. It just doesn't cut it off, and it does go negative, but it goes negative far enough east that you wouldn't have to worry about a changeover to rain with it. So there's that. And then the problem is, as far as anything beyond that, I mean, it looks like the whole trough just kind of shifts to the east into eastern Canada uh, for next weekend, which was at a time when the AO was supposed to be going positive. Why don't we just check that to see if that's still the case? Because that might be one of the reasons why the models aren't showing that much um, AO. AO. Okay, let's see if this is
Hey-o,
exactly.
hey-o.
Yeah, so here's the Arctic oscillation. And yeah, look at this, Joe. Look at the 15th, we're negative, negative, negative. And then probably around the 18th or 19th, you get this big spike up to the neutral line. This was off the 0Z run. So that kind of explains the European with the 945 low. For some reason, it's kind of backed off on that. Um, so I just want to look at the NAO. I haven't checked the NAO in a while. So let's see what the NAO is doing. And here it is. I was wondering what. Oh, well, no, what happened to it? They usually have that chart near the top. Try again. Oh, there it is. So the NAO right now, which is almost 2 standard deviations negative, also rises rapidly to the neutral line at the same time. So it is telling you that there are big pressure changes that are going to be going on uh, over that weekend of the 20th and 21st. Now, it might make for a big storm. It may not necessarily be a big storm off the East Coast, but I think we have to respect the signal and wait at least into early next week to see if models start to do different things because clearly there's model volatility right now where we're seeing anytime you see things like this when you spike up rapidly on these teleconnections, you're getting big changes in the atmosphere that usually makes the models a little more squirrely. So you want to pay attention to that. Okay, so don't go on one run and say, okay, well, it's got a big storm, therefore it's a lock, because it definitely may not be there on the next run, or it may have a completely, different look to it. All right, I saw there was one more request asking to look on Pivotal and see if with the winds. And by the way, on the screen right now, you'll see this was the ensemble GFS tonight, which was colder. And this is for Tuesday, and it basically gave a 4 to 6 inch snowfall from Delaware all the way up into southern New England. So that's the ensembles. I don't know if that's going to be where we're ultimately going to wind up. So I'd be very careful to draw conclusions here on Thursday. Uh, we have a whole weekend to get to first. And now the European wind forecast, we'll do that last and wrap it up. So let me get that on the screen. Uh, this is the new 18Z run, so let's see what it's got. So these are wind gusts. And okay, so at 1 a.m., We're gusting into the 40s and in New Jersey, Long Branch, Trenton, Philadelphia, Toms River, Vineland, all gusting between 50 and 50 and 55 miles an hour. Wilmington 54, gusts in the 40s and low 50s in eastern Pennsylvania, gust in the 30s up the Hudson Valley west of the Hudson, gust in the 30s in Connecticut, 43 at Long Island. That's at 1 a.m. And then let's see what happens at 7 a.m. 49 at Brentwood, 55 at Long Branch, 52 at Toms River. I don't know what happens in the hours in between, so maybe in between is when you hit your peaks. And then after that, we're gusting still over 40 miles an hour at 1 in the afternoon and at 7 p.m. Saturday evening, and still gusting in the 35 mile an hour range at 1 a.m. and finally down below 30 miles an hour in gusts by 7 a.m. Sunday, and only to pick up after that during the day Sunday. So it might be windy for a while once it gets windy. Just we'll get through the peak winds and then just settle back, but it'll still stay pretty windy going into Sunday.
And the temperatures should remain well above freezing, well above freezing, well above normal. We're talking about, I think, temperatures in the 50s after midnight tomorrow night into the first half of the day on Saturday, and then a gradual falling off of the temperatures later Saturday, and then a sharper fall or decline into Sunday, and then forget about it. Next week, it will be either near seasonable or actually below seasonal norms for a good part of next week. Most definitely a trend toward much colder weather is on the way for next week.
All right. So, that note, let's wrap it up. Joe and I are usually off on Fridays, but as we said earlier, we will be here tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. We will be off on Saturday, and then we will be back on Sunday at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. So on tomorrow, off on Saturday, on for
Yes.
Sunday. Okay?
And we want to thank David Fuller, who is our only super chat hitter tonight, but he hit it not, I guess, to make up for others. He hit it twice tonight. So thank you very much, David, for hitting super chat. And thank you all.